Nope. Okay, so we're going to talk about setting up some word problems. So our first thing is a pediatrician recommends that a baby's bath water be 95 degrees. But it is acceptable for the temperature to vary from this amount by as much as 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so a pediatrician recommends the baby's bath water be 95 degrees, but is acceptable for the temperature to vary from this amount by as much as 3 degrees. Write an absolute value inequality to find the range of acceptable temperatures. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my absolute value. The temperature of my bath water minus what it's supposed to be can vary by as much as 3 degrees. So can it be 5 degrees? Or does it have to be less than 3 degrees? Well, it has to be less than 3 degrees. So it's a less than or equal to 3 degrees. And this is going to give us that absolute value inequality that we want. So we're going to use that idea to help us with the next one. A dry chemical fire extinguisher should be pressurized to 125 psi, but it is acceptable for the pressure to differ from this amount by at most 75 psi. So my pressure minus what it's supposed to be can be at the most 75. So it has to be less than or equal to 75 psi. So we're looking at this at most and as much. And that's all telling us that it has to be that value or less. Okay, our next one. A number is no more than 7 units away from 5. No more than 7 units away from 5. So I'm going to start with my absolute value, my number, and its distance away from 5 can be no more than, so less than or equal to 7 units. And then typically we should have used the number n because it said n, so let's go ahead and change that. So it is technically correct based on their instructions. So we could actually test this out. We could ask, well, 6 is no more than 7 units away from 5, so let's test. Is 6 minus 5, is the absolute value of that less than 7? Well, yeah, absolute value of 1 is less than or equal to 7, so we did good. Okay, so just reviewing some of the stuff that we talked about before with our absolute value equations, absolute value or inequalities have to be by itself. So I'm highlighting these absolute values to show you that there's other things around it that need to be moved away before we can solve. So here I'm going to divide by 3. So now I have that absolute value x minus 2 is greater than 5. And now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take the original inequality, x minus 2 is greater than 5. And then I'm going to take x minus 2, I flip the symbol, and I make it negative. Now the next thing I need to know is this an and or is it an or problem? Well, because it's a greater than, it's or. Because it needs to be going out. Greater than problems go out. So now I go ahead and solve. I add 2 to both sides. So I get x is greater than 7. I know my 5 looks like a 6. Or, and now I add 2 to both sides here. X is less than negative 3. And there's our answer. On our second one, our absolute value is not by itself, so I need to move the 1. So now I have absolute value x plus 3 is less than 2. Now I separate it out. X plus 3 is less than 2. And then I'm going to have x plus 3. I flip the symbol, and then I have a negative 2, and I change the sign. Now, because the original symbol is less than, this is an and problem. And now I solve my inequalities. And there's our solution. Okay, on our next one, again, our absolute value is not by itself, so I have to move the 4. So I minus 4 on both sides. So now I have the absolute value of 3x is less than negative 3. And now we've got a problem because now we've got this negative. And so we've got to think about, can absolute value be smaller than a negative number? Well, the only thing smaller than negative numbers is negative numbers, and absolute value can't be negative. So this is a no solution. And on our next one, again, our absolute value is not by itself, so I add 3 to both sides. And now I have the absolute value of x plus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 5. Okay, so now I have a negative there. So now I really got to think about this. I got to think about, can my absolute value be greater than a negative number? Well, absolute value is positive, and positive numbers are always bigger than negative, so this is always true, which is all real numbers. And that's it for chapter 2 and our absolute value. So pay attention to your practice test. There's one assignment that you're taking truly serious. It's that practice test. It's the best way to prepare for the test.